All right, welcome back, everyone. We continue live right here. Pittsburgh CW. Bob Pompeani with you at 412-575-2600. Twitter was hot and heavy tonight, and we have a lot of different comments. I'll try to move some in as I go along. RLM says, now that the Patriots have lost, we know for sure the NFL is going to change the catch rule. They should have done it a long time ago. It was bad a couple of years ago. It got worse as the year goes on, and this year was terrible, quite frankly. And Al Riveron is coming back for more. But at least, and I think one of the reasons why the Corey Clement touchdown stood was because he knew 300 million people are watching this. The league this week pretty much said they want to change in that rule. Al Riveron heard all that. He knew that people were watching. He did not have the onions to change that. And if he did, boy, would he have been met with a lot. And he shouldn't have. Quite frankly, both of those were catches. A little movement and ball, as long as it's in your arms, that's possession to me and always will be. I'm sounding like a broken record. I'm sorry. Let's go to Brian in McCandless. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good, Bob. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. Fired up, actually. It was a great game, wasn't it?
Yeah, me too. Kudos to Philadelphia. They played a great game.
Yes,
I think that they played as a team. That's the one thing I sort of sat back and said. Not a lot of high-priced players, especially on the offense, but I thought they played well together as a team, and they were well coached.
Yeah, big-time coaching. I mean, I thought Doug Peterson was terrific. He didn't change a lot of what he did. He was bold throughout the season. If you watch them play, he was bold again in this game, maybe very bold, but he got away with it.
He gets to the end and says, hey, it's the last game. Let's go for it. We're not going to get back in. So.
But how about the performance of Nick Foles? I mean, that's an amazing story. And here he is now, returning as the backup unless they trade him. And I got to believe a team out there is going to call, knock on the door and say, hey, Doug Peterson, I need a quarterback. I'm willing to give you a first and third, whatever it takes to get him. And I think that'll happen. I do.
Oh, I do. I think his paycheck's just going to escalate. Seriously.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks for the call. Appreciate that. Let's move along. We got Dan in Wexford. Hey, Dan, welcome to the Sports Call. How are you?
Hey, Bob, I'm good. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Just had one question for Mike Tomlin. Why wasn't James Harrison starting for the Steelers this year?
That was a bad move. It should never have happened. As I said at the time
tonight, don't you think?
What's that? Terrific, and he played a lot of the time. He was in there. He missed a couple of sacks early in the game, but he was having his way at the end. And with the left tackle, and the thing about him is that he still can play, and that's the thing. Even if, and I'm not at all condoning the way Harrison acted, I think that was childish. If he was trying to force that, well, I would have done what I would have done with LeGarrette Blount. He wouldn't have been traded because the destination always was going to be Philadelphia if they were let go, and that was the case in both of those cases. So.
Yeah, I agree, but still, I'm just wondering why he didn't start.
I don't know. I thought as the season wore on, he would start. He should have started. He was better than what they had. There's no question about that. Thanks for the call, man. Let's go out to Mark in Clearfield. Mark, welcome to the Sports Call. How are you?
Bob, thank you for taking my call. I love the show and so happy to talk to you tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pitt basketball team.
Oh, you're changing gears. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a diehard Pitt fan, and I'm a little bit concerned about the future of the Pitt basketball team. I'm not a pro-Stallings fan or an anti-Stallings fan, but I'm starting to wonder if this is the coach that's going to be a staple for Pitt in the future. And I wanted to get your thoughts about what you see as the future for Pitt and if he's going to be here next year. I'll hang up and listen to you.
All right. Thanks for the call. I appreciate that. I would say this to you. Number one, what was he going to do last year and this year? The cupboard was pretty much empty. He was starting over. He had a lot of guys who didn't want to be here last year, were giving him trouble, artists and young and whatever. So they cleared the house there. I think coming back next year, Ryan Luther is going to get an extra year, and they have some good young guys. They're going to add to that mix. I think it's just a question of patience. If you are Heather Lyke, you have to have this decision on your hand soon. She didn't exactly give him a vote of confidence recently in the Post-Gazette. You could read that a lot of different ways. But if you are rebuilding, it is what it is. It's going to take some time regardless of who's here. If they go out and get rid of him and bring in somebody else, chances are it will not be a Tom Crean, someone sitting in the sidelines who has a history. It'll be some young guy. And no matter who it is, it's going to take some time. So the question is, do you want to rebuild with him or do you want to rebuild with somebody else? That's going to be ultimately her decision. Let's go to Rob in the Hill District. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Hey, Bob. I got a couple questions. Listen, I'm gonna say this: John Elway would be stupid not to get Nick Foles as a quarterback next year. But what I'm calling about is the Patriots is never the most talented team. Where they beat the Steelers at is in coaching. And if Mike Tomlin had the same mentality as a Doug Peterson, I mean, we will have 2 or 3 more Super Bowls. What you think?
Well, they only played him in the playoffs. Last year was the last time. And they never got a chance after that. So I think we're kind of dug into this whole thought that New England owns Pittsburgh. And while they have pretty much done that when they've played, I go back to this past year. I think they got robbed out of the game. That's just my opinion. I know it's old news at this point, but it became relevant again tonight after that Ernst call. But I think, yes, the coaching defensively has to be better. But you saw tonight, even Doug Peterson and his defense, which is a very good defense, they couldn't touch Tom Brady until the very end. So you may say that. It's difficult to stop Gronkowski. It's difficult to stop that offense. They put up record numbers. Philadelphia hadn't gotten that much yardage against them all year. They did it tonight because of their offense, quite frankly. Their offense, and I always thought the Steeler offense could score with New England and outscore them. They haven't done it. Tonight, Foles and that offense did. A good run game, and he was outstanding when he had to be. Good play calls. I think the coaching difference there was the coaching staff in Philadelphia put Foles in position to succeed in a lot of those 3rd and short, 4th and short. They came up with plays that a lot of people didn't expect, but it's all about execution of those plays also. Line 1 we go. It's Mike in Uniontown. Dilly, dilly, Philly, Philly, Mike.
Love it. Hey, Bob, I know Blunt was way out of line with his kid. They got rid of him. They didn't do that with AB today when he threw a hissy fit on the sideline. Well, I still think it was a knee-jerk reaction. I really do. All right, thank you, Bob.
Okay, you're not going to get rid of a guy who just signed a $70 million contract. James Harrison's 39. I thought for sure they were going to do what they did last year with James Harrison, which was not play him hardly at all during the first part of the season. And then in the second half, when he's fresh and preserved, you put him in there, and he led the team last year with 5 sacks, if you'll recall. This year, who was standing in his way? T.J. Watt had hit a wall. Bud Dupree wasn't too good. What are their other options? Arthur Moats, I like Arthur a lot, but I'd rather have James Harrison. James Harrison should have been playing on a lot of those situations, and he wasn't. And since he wasn't, he got, childish in his actions. But still, I just would have said, James, I'm sorry, I don't believe you can do it. Whatever the case, I'm not getting rid of you. He forced that. You knew where he was going to end up, but I guess he can get a participation trophy. Let's go to Dave in Squirrel Hill. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Hi, Bob. Hey, did Chris Collinsworth really say they should have overturned the touchdown by the tight end? He took 3 steps. I counted them.
That's
after
what I'm
he
saying.
got the ball and reached it across the goal line. Then he loses it when he's falling down and grabs it again. So what? That was a touchdown.
In any other football league. In any other football league. See, I think Collinsworth, like a lot of people, get jaded by what this Riveron guy has done. You don't know what to expect because he was very inconsistent. That's my point. All you had to do was see that in regular motion, and you knew it was a football play. He took 3 steps. He lunged for the end zone. Please. Why do we have to analyze it? And for him to say it was a incomplete pass? Are you kidding me? I like Chris Collinsworth, but I can't believe it.
I don't know. They got to redo this rule next
year
or something.
Well, I've been saying that for a while. I'm sick of watching it. We got to go to a break. Marty, Tim Berry, we're coming out with more right after this on Pittsburgh CW.